here, and today we're doing a comparison between Fans Toys Koot and Transbots Locke. Two very different takes on Masterpiece Cup. Okay, here we go. So we've got Fans Toys on the left and we've got Transbots on the right. And key differences are Fans Toys, you get the translucent pieces, which you don't with the Transbots, but to be fair, the XTB is going for a purely toon look, and that is it. So it's kind of not an expected thing. You've got the kind of standard blasters with both. This one, the XTB's got a bit of paint on it and it looks a little better actually. This looks quite big and clunky, even though it is nicely sculpted. You've got the additional faces. Fans Toys only has the one, and it can hold the cigar, which is detachable. So are the eyes actually, bit annoying that. XTB does that and it keeps the cigar attached, very handy. And you get two additional faces, plus the domed top. The problem with these is you can't really squish them into the face at all. There's just too much paint pretty much all over everything for the XTB accessories to be usable. Even these, the Shark Tail and the blaster, which are probably the best out of this set, they kind of don't hold in the hand properly. It just kind of flops out and wobbles out. The Target Masters, although look, I mean, the Fans Toys is like really basic, and it's kind of like that standard Masterpiece thing of being pretty underwhelming for a Target Master. No paint apart from the face, but it does work. You can turn this into a blaster type thing and pick it in and it will hold. These two are rubbish. They're covered in paint, it affects all the tolerances, all the ball pegs pop off every time you use it. It's just super easy to kind of fall apart. And even on this one, there's a QC error with the handle won't roll to where it's flip out to where it's supposed to be. So that doesn't even work. This one has got a really weird setup. There's a hinge in the middle which brings the handle out, and you kind of have to move these. I can't remember which way it is, but it's not very effective. And again, stuff's very covered in paint and not easy to use. So look, overall, you'd kind of argue if all of this stuff worked as it should, you'd give it to the XTB, but it doesn't. It's very unusable and not good for that in that way. Whereas the Fans Toys, it does what it should do. Everything works, and you get a nice set of accessories as well. So I'm going to give it to the Fans Toys on this one. So in terms of comparison, I'll just point out the differences. I won't go through every point of articulation. So they both have exactly the same articulation, exactly the same features, except for Transbots has an additional index finger, a pointer there. Well, it's not really a pointer, it's more of a claw, but the Fans Toys doesn't. And XTB has, I don't want to call it an ab crunch because it doesn't hold particularly well. It's more of an ab flop, but it is there. If you can get to use it properly, it is there. So XTB is marginally more posable than the Fans Toys. So in terms of quality, what I generally mean is the paint, the materials that are used, and the build, as in how it's all put together. And Fans Toys absolutely destroys the Transbots in all three areas. This is a really great mix of die-cast stuff, high-grade plastics, beautifully applied paint, really solid ratchets. It's everything that you'd want from a Masterpiece figure. In terms of those three categories, yes, he does have issues, which we'll come on to. But for those three things, he's super solid and well worth your money. It's like a guaranteed kind of win in that respect. This thing feels like it's been put together as an Airfix model or something like that. It's like a custom job. Looks great, we'll come on to the presence, but when you get up close, even picking it up, as you pick it up, it feels wobbly. Got paint chips all over. The internal pieces that hold all of the panels and things like that are super loose. It kind of flops apart at every opportunity, and the quality is absolutely atrocious. I've done a full review of this guy. If you want to check that out afterwards, you can kind of see all the issues that I point out in there. But Fans Toys absolutely sails away with this one in terms of quality. So in terms of presence, there's pluses and minuses for both these figures, to be honest. If you want a really toon looking thing, then the Transbots, it really does look like it's walked off the screen. It's pretty incredible. It's due to the colours and the palette mix, and the proportions actually, it just has the look of Cup. I would argue, having said that though, that the face sculpt, I think this looks more like cartoon Cup than this one. It's just that the colour of this, the white that's kind of used, is more accurate than the fans toys. That's just a personal thing. It's purely subjective, isn't it? And you know, generally, actually, just a point in terms of colours, I'm pretty sure I can get images from the cartoon where he has got this darker green rather than this. So I don't know, but I think it's the overall blend of all these different shades that this one, the X Transbots, just nails tune-wise. But you know, presence isn't just about that; it's about proportions and overall look as well. Here we have a proper heroic-looking Cup. He looks fantastic. The fans toys, you can't argue with it. There are a couple of clean-up things that I think put pluses and minuses on both sides, to be honest. Obviously, the backpack on the X Transbots is a lot smoother looking, and I really like this at the back. This looks all kibbly and kind of put together, even though it's not too bad, to be honest, for a Masterpiece Transformer. But, you know, down on the legs, I think that the fans toys has got a bit of a smoother look down there. There's not as many panel breaks. Some of this is actually due to tabbage, but there are a couple of gaps down there nonetheless. So yeah, it's a tie, to be honest. They've both got fantastic presence, and it's a choice of preference, really. My own personal one is I prefer the way this looks, even though I do like a bit of tune every now and again. I just prefer the kind of proportions of this. But having said that, this guy really does look absolutely stunning. He really does. But it's a tie. There we go. So for the transformation, I'm not going to show it, and frankly, I feel like I've transformed too many Masterpiece Cups this week. I feel absolutely drained by it. The funny thing about this is that when people think of Fans Toys Koot, one of the things they say is that the transformation is absolutely horrible, they don't want to do it, and it's a real bear, and it is pretty difficult, to be honest. It's quite challenging, but the thing I will say is that it's backed up by solid quality materials, and it is very durable. So it's like a 10 to 15 minute process. It is frustrating, granted, and it's not the best Masterpiece transformation that you'll ever come across. It's probably at the harder end of the scale. Now then, the X Transbots is so ridiculously difficult and frustrating. It's incredible how bad it is. There's a review by a guy called Mimo. You should check it out. He nails it, where he pretty much he says that there's too many moving parts trying to occupy the same space at the same time, and that is the issue. And also, to add to that, those moving parts are all super flimsy, and on mine I had a screw in a critical place, just kind of fell out, and it won't go back in, and it's because the thread of the screw is too small to go back into the plastic that it's supposed to stay in. So I pretty much had the whole thing flopping around on one pin joint. It's very scary process. Looking at some of the stories I've seen, I think I got off pretty lightly because other people have had all sorts of things falling off theirs, but it is terrible. It's a really badly designed scheme. You know, there are moving pieces that are trying to clear past each other where they shouldn't, and also the bits that are trying to move, really poor quality as well. So overall, hands down, Fans Toys Koot has got by far the better transformation and engineering. So in terms of alt mode comparison, obviously the big standout difference is the colour between the two, and X Transbots I think is kind of nailed the tune coloration a little bit better, which, you know, it's kind of it's inconsistent anyway, isn't it? Because you could slow down some scenes of the movie and see Cup in a much darker green like this, and in others he's in a lighter kind of colour. So it's a preference thing, I guess, but obviously there is a very different approach to the coloration there. Stylization is sort of the same. It's basically the same approach. Finish wise, I think, is where these two differ, because once you kind of pick up the X Transbots and get close to it, you notice little bumps and kind of niggles and little unfinished bits of paint where sort of one bit meets the other bit of plastic. I think I've got a little bubble on the front windshield there as well. Whereas the Fans Toys, there's just nothing like that. It's as smooth as I don't know what. There might be the odd little thing, but it's not as noticeable on all the cracks and joins that are there on the X Transbots. Kind of stylistically, looks wise, I think probably the Fans Toys cleans it better, or it does to me anyway. And yeah, I know I've got like things that are not lined up here, panels and things like that. But let's say I had all of those tabbed in, you'd still have kind of just more visible cracks, and in particular this one. And interestingly, the line across the windshield there, because the big thing with this, the X Transbots, was that it wasn't going to have the vertical line across the windshield, but in alt mode obviously it's got this, and I could squeeze that together a bit more, but it would still be noticeable, whereas you can't really see the fans toys until you kind of turn it around and look head on. So I think this is probably cleaner. I think this has the better tune coloration, but this is cleaner and it's definitely got a more premium finish to it. So personal preference for me would be the fans toys has got the better alt mode. So there we go, all done and dusted, and for me there's a standout winner, and that's the fans toys. Yes, you could make a little argument about posability, technical thing on the ab crunch, and give it to the X Transbots. And the presents, that's probably the big difference between the two. It's a personal preference though, isn't it? Because some people want the tune offering that XTB are going for, some people want the heroic proportions that fans toys go for. What you can't argue with is that both figures do actually look good. Now, what's really interesting for me is that the big niggles that were there with the fans toys offering, that people kind of hoped would be settled with X Transbots. It was about the transformation, it was about the sort of Ghibli looking backpack, and that line down the centre of the chest. Now, yes, you could argue that the line down the centre of the chest and the Ghibli backpack, X Transbots sort of nails, but the transformation, oh my god, they've made fans toys Koot look easy to transform by a country mile. That's how bad the process is with the X Transbots. And in terms of the aesthetic thing, you know, that if you're kind of thinking, is it worth the trade-off? For me, I will just say I've got both these figures in hand, and I will happily take the Autobot symbol and snip it down the middle with a pair of scissors and stick it on fans toys Koot. I haven't done it yet, but I will do, just to make a point, because there is no trade-off there for me that is worth it. You're paying masterpiece money for a masterpiece figure, and you want a quality robot that you can transform and handle, and XTB does not give you that. Anyway, I hope it's been useful. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, take care, and bye for now.